Hello and welcome to this brand new edition of Global Lens on News9 Live with me, Neha Khanna. As always, we have a packed show for you. Let's get started with our big focus, which is once again on the growing tensions in the Middle East. In just the last couple of days, at least 3 high-profile assassinations of top Hamas and Hezbollah leaders by Israel have been reported, sending shockwaves through the world, particularly the Middle East, that's already been on the boil for months now. Undoubtedly, these are also major victories for Israel, whose stated military objective behind the 10-month-old Gaza war is to wipe out Hamas and its leadership. Today, Israel's military said Hamas's military chief, Mohammed Deif, was killed in an Israeli airstrike in the Gaza Strip last month. Deif was targeted in the strike on a compound in the Khan Yunis area on the 13th of July. The Israeli Defense Forces say identification of the body has now been completed. Hamas is yet to confirm their top commander's killing. Israel says Deif, known as the Bin Laden of Gaza, was one of the figures responsible for planning the 7th October terror attacks in southern Israel, in which 1,200 people were killed and over 250 taken hostage. Deif was widely seen as the second-ranking Hamas official in Gaza, behind Yahya Sinwar, the group's leader in the territory. Israel's Defense Minister Yoav Gallant has said the death of Mohammed Deif is a significant milestone in the dismantling of Hamas. He added, this operation reflects the fact that Hamas is disintegrating and that Hamas terrorists may either surrender or they will be eliminated. News of Mohammed Deif's killing came just a day after Hamas's political chief, Ismail Haniyeh, was assassinated in Iran's capital, Tehran. A development that left the entire region shell-shocked, while sending out an unmistakable message that Hamas leaders are not even safe in Iran anymore. While Israel is yet to comment on Haniyeh's killing, it is widely presumed that Tel Aviv was behind the assassination of Hamas's public face, the man who was leading all the ceasefire and hostage release negotiations between Israel and Hamas. So why is Mohammed Deif's killing, that's been reported today, such a big win for Israel? Mohammed Deif was appointed head of the Izz-ad-Din al-Qassam brigades, the military arm of the Hamas movement, back in 2002. For decades, he was seen as one of Israel's most wanted men, and he reportedly survived 7 assassination attempts over the years. He was born in Gaza's Khan Yunis refugee camp in 1965, when the territory was occupied by Egypt. As a young man in the 1980s, he joined Hamas and quickly rose to prominence. Israel accused Deif of planning and supervising bus bombings, which killed tens of Israelis in 1996, and of involvement in the capture and killing of 3 Israeli soldiers in the mid-1990s. Deif is also known to have helped engineer the construction of the complex maze of tunnels that have allowed Hamas fighters to enter Israel from Gaza. During the current conflict, Deif is believed to have directed Hamas's military operations from within those underground tunnels inside the Gaza Strip. Israel's confirmation of Deif's death comes at the end of a turbulent week in the Israel-Gaza conflict, which has stoked fears of a broader regional war. Just last Saturday, 12 Israeli children were killed after a rocket fell on a football field in the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu blamed Lebanon-based Hezbollah, saying they would pay a heavy price. And sure enough, they did. On Tuesday, Israel retaliated with an airstrike on Beirut, which killed senior Hezbollah commander Fuad Shukr. He was widely believed to be the number 2 leader in Hezbollah. And just hours later, Hamas's political leader Ismail Haniyeh was killed in a strike on a building where he was staying during a visit to Iran's capital. In Tehran, thousands gathered as a procession carried Haniyeh's coffin through the streets today. Iran and Hamas have blamed Haniyeh's assassination on Israel. Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who led prayers at the service, has vowed to avenge Haniyeh. In fact, he's issued an order to strike Israel directly. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has vowed to keep fighting, saying his country is ready for any scenario and has delivered crushing blows to its enemies. Remember, nearly 300 days of the Israeli military campaign has killed over 39,000 Palestinians and wounded another 91,000 people. The question now is this: what happens next? Could these major military victories for Israel be an inflection point in the Gaza war? How could these developments affect Israel-Hamas ceasefire negotiations and negotiations for the release of the remaining hostages? What will these assassinations mean for the Middle East? What will the response from the Iran-led Axis of Resistance be? Could we see a major escalation of tensions between Israel and Iran? Already a tinderbox, could the Middle East get engulfed in a wider regional conflagration? And what role is the United States likely to play in this scenario? All right, so lots of questions there and a lot to unpack. Let's quickly introduce our guest to you. Joining me on Global Lens tonight is Lieutenant General Sanjay Kulkarni, defense expert, Dr. Zakir Hussain, a Middle East expert and a former research fellow at the Indian Council of World Affairs. Lev Aaron, Israeli journalist and columnist, is also with us. A bit later on the show, we're hoping to be joined by Ambassador Bhaswati Mukherjee, former Indian diplomat, and Captain Alok Bansal, director at the India Foundation. A warm welcome to all my guests. Lieutenant General Sanjay Kulkarni, let me start with you, sir. You and I have been on this show multiple times to discuss the Israel-Hamas war in Gaza and its possible fallout in the larger Middle East region. For months now, the question that's been asked is, could we see a wider regional conflagration? What do you make, sir, of these tectonic developments that have taken place in just the last couple of days? At least 3 high-profile assassinations of top Hamas and Hezbollah leaders by Israel being reported in the last 24 to 48 hours. And Ismail Haniyeh and Mohammed Deif were no small leaders. One was the public face of Hamas and the other a man who headed their military wing. How big a setback do you think this is for Hamas? How big a victory is this for Israel? And could this be an inflection point in the war itself?
Thank you, Neha. At the very outset, the world's undergoing a very, very difficult time. There's no denying the fact that it's difficult times, a very volatile situation. But having said that, I still feel that the de-escalation starts now. There may be a limited offensive, definitely, because Iran has to retaliate for whatever has happened. Iran did retaliate last time also, and we know there was absolutely no damage done whatsoever. Similar kind of retaliation you can expect from Iran this time also, though, of course, it's Iran's reputation at stake, because Iran's proxies are Hamas, Hezbollah, and Houthi. And you have the swearing-in ceremony of their president, where he is one of the honored guests and where he is eliminated. Obviously, it's a big victory for Israel. Israel has been wanting to convey it in no uncertain terms that if they intend eliminating the Jews or throw them into the sea, that's not acceptable. It's better to live and let live. If that not be so, then the political head goes. The political head having been eliminated, obviously the negotiations come to kind of a grinding halt. And here, Deif, who was part of the threesome, along with Isa and Sinwar, who did what they did on October 7th, obviously 2 of them have been eliminated. Now, Sinwar is a man who is still surviving. Now, he is the man who does not see eye to eye with Mashal. Now, Mashal is the man whom the leadership now from Haniyeh passes on to. So obviously, Palestinians are also in a flux. They really don't know what next will come up. Hamas, despite so much of Israel destruction caused, 40,000 dead, over 1 lakh injured, over 20 lakh people displaced, Gaza completely destroyed and nothing whatsoever, still 50% of the Hamas leadership is alive. If that be so, with so much of destruction, Hezbollah, even though just in solidarity with Gaza, have been able to do, but use only about 4,000 or 5,000 of the rockets and missiles of the 2 lakh that they have. So Hezbollah may not be very precision, but notwithstanding, 10 kilometers, 100 kilometers is adequate to cause destruction in Israel. Nobody wants the conflict. Nobody wants. Neither Israel wants the conflict to get a wider this thing, neither does Iran want. But the question is, if and the way it is going with China's entry, China wanting to negotiate, facilitate Hamas with Fatah and making PLO as the representative organization. Hamas and Fatah don't see eye to eye. Earlier, neither did Saudi Arabia in Iran see eye to eye. That's again Chinese facilitated both these countries getting together. With this kind of a scenario, the China stepping into the Middle East, obviously the threat to United States of America. So the course of diplomacy with obviously with the command of Israel, who is very much ensuring that this kind of a thing does not occur. I think Netanyahu, having got back from USA, it's very difficult to say whether there was a green signal given to what is happening or what happened in Iran or what has happened with Deif and in Khan Yunis by the thing, the resulting with those 12 children having died. Even there, we found Shakur also having gone, who is Nasrullah's right-hand man. So a lot of things are happening. Notwithstanding all this, I'm still very hopeful it will not go beyond the threshold. The limited offensive by Iran can be expected, which can be taken care of without any this thing. But expecting it to go, because Gaza as yet has not affected the world. But this, if should it go out of hand, like what happened last time with Lebanon, with even, there also you found Nasrullah having said that he was sorry. He never expected kidnapping would result in such a great catastrophe that Beirut was almost destroyed. But that time, Lebanon, Beirut got some money. Today, Lebanon is in no state. It's an economically shattered country. And in such a situation, everybody would want things under control. Limited offensive, yes, might go, but otherwise, no. Yeah,
limited offensive, but you don't believe that this is going to spiral out of control and degenerate into some kind of wider regional conflagration, which some have been fearing. Of course, we saw in the month of April that there was a limited exchange of missile and drone attacks between Iran and Israel. Many are hoping we might see a repeat of that so that both sides can, in a sense, claim that they have avenged the attack on their territory. But is that how it is going to pan out? Only time will tell. Let's go across to our Israeli friend Lev Aaron joins me on the show. Lev, let me ask you this question. Are you a happy man today? Are Israelis in a sense celebrating? Because fact of the matter is that the men who have been eliminated were some of the most powerful figures in the militias that Israel has been engaged in a conflict with. From Fuad Shukr, the second most powerful Hezbollah commander, to Ismail Haniyeh, the public face and political chief of Hamas, as well as the head of Hamas's military wing, Mohammed Deif, who Israel says was the real mastermind of the 7th October terror attacks. Even as this war rages on for close to 10 months now, does Israel now believe that it is close to avenging the 7th of October? Do you believe that this could be an inflection point in the war? The Lieutenant General on our show actually seems to think de-escalation could begin from here, while there are others who are worrying that there could be a big escalation in the Middle East. How do you see it?
Okay, so first of all, you asked about happiness. I don't think most of us feel much of a happiness. We have hostages in Gaza. And also in Gaza, we don't have the success that we had in Tehran and in Beirut to kill exactly the right people. In Gaza, very often we try to kill the right people, but also many innocent people are getting killed. So in Gaza, it is a messy place and we are much less successful. But I think there is a sense of relief, and I will tell you in which sense. Even a year ago, after small attacks of Israel, we could see dozens of rockets from Gaza, more than 100, 200 that went into the Israeli territory. And now we've killed a number to Hezbollah and Mohammed Deif and the killing in Tehran. And still we see that the toolbox of Hamas in Gaza is quite empty. They have a full will for a big vendetta, but they are not capable of doing it. That's why we talk about Iran, because the big paradigm of Iran is not is to have clean hands and work only via proxies, not to do anything by Iranian hands. And right now, Iran doesn't really have Hamas. Also, Hezbollah is pondering what they should do. The Houthis also got a very big attack from Israel after killing one Israeli citizen in Tel Aviv. So right now, I think that in Israel, we feel that something in the war has changed. Yes.
The war has changed, but I need to ask you a follow-up question, Lev. Since you represent Israel on the panel, of course, I don't expect you to speak for the Israeli government. But, you know, Prime Minister Netanyahu, of course, has said that the country will continue its fight. It's not going to stop anytime soon. But considering that the primary stated military objective of this war was to quote-unquote wipe out Hamas and its top leadership, and given that you have actually had considerable success in recent days in eliminating many of those big names in the top leadership of Hamas, my question is, how much longer do you think Israel would want to continue fighting this war? Yes, I'm aware that a lot of hostages are yet to return home, but there are many who will tell you that the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh, who was leading those negotiations, actually comes as a setback to those negotiations and may even make it tougher to bring back those hostages. How does Israel see this?
Okay, so I think the hostages is the biggest domestic issue in Israel by far. More than Ismail Haniyeh, more than Hezbollah. Everybody wants to see the hostages back, even if we know that many of them are not alive anymore. We want to finish this issue. And right now, I feel that Bibi is playing it quite tough. And also Hamas, Sinwar, is playing it quite tough. So as far as the hostages are there, I don't see a situation that the war ends, especially that Israel feels right now that dynamics in Gaza is very good for Israel. The Hamas is losing their spirit. They're losing their leaders, their even legendary leaders. A lot of people inside Gaza, they hate Hamas. You see more and more vocal voices that are not afraid to say in the day after, we are not ready to see a Hamas leadership in Gaza. So yes, Israel feels that it is winning the war, and Israel has no way to bring right now the hostages without an agreement with Sinwar. And I hope that very soon we will see this agreement manifested.
If Sinwar is not assassinated as well, the rate at which Israel is going, who knows what might happen next. But Lev, I know that you had only limited time with us on the show. So on that note, I'd like to thank you for joining us on Global Lens. Thank you so much for your time. Okay, let me now take this to Dr. Zakir Hussain. Dr. Hussain, where do you see things going from here? There are those who believe, at least the Israelis believe, that they have broken the back of Hamas, especially with the assassination of these two top leaders. Many of them are now hoping that Hamas will surrender. Now, this is not a terror organization that can be expected to easily surrender, given that this war has already gone on for 10 months. But do you believe that this could well be a point of de-escalation in this war? Or, as some have expressed the fear, that things could actually get a lot worse, especially with Iran vowing revenge against Israel for the killing of Ismail Haniyeh on its territory?
First of all, thank you. First of all, I want to say that this is not the first time Israel has killed. In 2004, it has killed the founder of Hamas, Yassin, Mohammed Yassin, and its co-founder Ratnisi within just 3 months. So Hamas has set back, of course, but its will revive again if it continues in the same way. Number one. Number second, now coming to Iran, has got a very good ground to declare victory and go back. Remaining of the Sinwar, he can deal later on. Now coming to Iran, now the retaliation of Iran, the degree of retaliation of Iran is very important for Hamas and the region. If it does as it has done previously, negotiated attack, it means that it is going to disillusion Hamas. It is not going to be as it has been. Second, if Hamas disintegrates, the unity of China, the unity which China brought of clubbing the 14 members, 14 organizations, it will be also gone. if if Iran takes a very stern action, it means that it is inviting the American intervention in the force. Now we have to see that whether during this election hour, how far America is going to jump in and take action against Iran. So which power is going to support, which party is going to support, because a lot of like Arab Muslims and youth of the America are against it. And that has forced Kamala Harris to issue a statement uh, in favor of Palestinian during the visit of uh, Netanyahu. So what I feel that all depends on the reaction of Iran, whether this war is going to escalate or not. And already we have seen the statement of Hezbollah chief that from tomorrow onward it is going to support Hamas. But again, we have to see that whether Hamas or Iran is going to put all the eggs and fight and finish its proxies, its resistant group or not. So most of the things depend on Iran. And certainly Hamas is a downturn and it is suffering, but the killing of Haniyeh is not good to bring peace in the region. So what I feel that most of the thing depends on Iran. While if Iran is not backing or taking a negotiated strike, it will escalate in a different way that will reduce the position of Iran in the region as well as part away Hamas as it did in the past during Syrian war. So to my understanding, most of the things depend on these parameters.
You're quite right, sir. Perhaps most of what happens next in the region will depend on Iran's response. The Iranian supreme leader has vowed revenge, saying, you killed our guest in our house, be prepared for the harsh punishment that we are going to inflict on you. But let me take this to Ambassador Bhaswati Mukherjee. Ambassador Mukherjee, you know, it is well known that Iran does not really engage in direct and conventional warfare. What it has done for a long time now is to wage a proxy war against Israel through its various militias, Hamas, Hezbollah and the Houthis. How do you think Iran is likely to react to the latest Israeli provocation of Ismail Haniyeh's assassination on Iranian soil? Do you believe Iran will only be looking for a face saver, given that they know that they do not want to get directly involved in a war with Israel and then with the United States, because automatically the US then comes into the picture? Or do you believe that things could actually get a lot worse before they get better?
I believe, Neha, that the Iranians are very smart, clever, strategic people. Face saving is very important, but I do not think that it will lead to a major escalation because it is not very clear even now as to actually who ordered the assassination, whose hand is actually behind the death of this man is not very clear. And if it actually happened that it was Israel who did it, in the heart of Tehran, inside a safe house with Iranian guards, then it would mean that the Israelis will be able to target others in Iran anytime they want, including Iranian top leadership. That is not a good message for the Iranian leaders to follow. Under those circumstances, I would say that they will definitely take revenge, as they've said, through proxies or indirectly, but they will bide their time so that the revenge, when it comes, could be either a top Israeli general or a top strategic commander who would be eliminated. And that won't be so easy because they don't have those kind of facilities that the Israelis have. But definitely they would take a revenge, but they would take it in a calibrated manner, and they would send the message across to the Israelis in advance, through their mediators, that this is being done for face saving, as they did in April. The other issue is that one of the persons who was eliminated, as you rightly pointed out to your Israeli guest, was actually supposed to be well, it's difficult to say for Hamas that he's a moderate, but he was supposed to be a kind of a moderate who was trying to negotiate the peace deal. So I'm not sure whether eliminating him was such a smart and good thing to do, because perhaps he would have been able to get a deal through. Finally, in the middle of a heated presidential campaign in the United States, where public opinion has actually shifted dramatically from being on Israel's side to being partially on the Palestinian side, I think there will be great pressure on the Israeli Prime Minister to now, having saved his face in a way, you could say, Neha, because he's been able to eliminate 2 targets in a manner which has actually roused the admiration of many in the West who say, look at what he's done. It's the way the Americans took out Osama bin Laden. And under those circumstances, this could be a good opportunity for him to try and clinch a deal by which he gets the hostages back and then look for some kind of a governance mechanism eventually in the Gaza Strip, because clearly Israel cannot occupy Gaza forever. That's very clear. And there is no appetite in the Israeli military to occupy it forever. So whether Netanyahu will listen, Neha, and we've discussed this earlier, that's the main issue, because for Netanyahu, his political survival appears to be contingent upon the continuation of the war. But that is not an issue, a position which is shared by many of his colleagues in his cabinet or by the Israeli people who are desperate to get the hostages back. So we have to see how it plays out. But I don't see a major escalation because they would not want a major escalation. The Iranians would not want a major escalation.
Absolutely. You make a good point. I mean, you know, now that some would say that Netanyahu has won major victories with the assassination of these high-profile Hamas and Hezbollah leaders, maybe he's regained some of his credibility at home and around the globe, and therefore this is a good time for him to sort of claim victory and make an exit from Gaza. On the other hand, these wins could very well embolden Netanyahu to carry on with this offensive in Gaza, where at least 39,000 Palestinians have already been killed. I need to take a quick break here on Global Lens, but we'll continue this conversation with all our guests on the other side.
Give it to me, pass. We'll put new glasses in the windows and they keep breaking it. This is the 4th time. You are playing football throughout the day. Will you win the world by playing football?
Yes, uncle. I will now conquer the world by playing football. Let's go to Germany.
World's largest football talent hunt, News9 Indian Tigers and Tigresses. In association with DFB Pokal, Bundesliga, BVB and India Football Center. Train and play matches in Europe. Register now and fly to Germany. IndianTigersandTigresses.com.
Over 20 healthcare trailblazers and leaders. 6 engaging sessions. 6 hours of engrossing conversations. Top trending healthcare issues. The Healthcare Summit 2024. An initiative by the TV9 Network and South First. Streaming on 3rd of August, only on News9.
इस खेल में अब खेला होगा, हर नहले पे दहला होगा। टीम बड़ा है, स्टेज बड़ा है, पूरा भारत साथ खड़ा है। साथ खड़ा है। गेम बड़ा है। Dribble like a rap, pass, setting up the trap. Kick it hard in the booth. Chuck, there for the ball. Chuck there for the ball. Chuck there for the ball. Chuck there for the ball.
For the very first time in our investigation, we unmasked the killer of Ravindra Matre.
In 5G, we have to stand with the world, and in 6G, we have to lead the world. winning a Grammy was an absolutely surreal experience.
This is News9 Live, India's only digital exclusive live stream. For the early adopters, bringing you the news 24/7. For the smart audiences on the smartest TVs. News9 Live. Stream now on your smart TVs.
Welcome back. You're watching Global Lens on News9 Live with me, Neha Khanna, and we're discussing the fallout of yet another Hamas leader's assassination, presumably by Israel. Okay, Captain Alok Bansal, director of the India Foundation, is also with us. But since Ambassador Bhaswati Mukherjee has to leave in a few minutes, I want to get a word in from her before I go across to Captain Bansal. Ambassador Mukherjee, before we let you go, I want to ask you this question. It is being said that whether the situation escalates in the region largely now depends on Iran's response. Iran, of course, on the face of it, has vowed revenge and is saying that Israel will not go unpunished. But at the same time, what role do you think the United States of America is likely to play in this? Because fact is that the US would not want another war on its hands, and if full-blown hostilities were to hypothetically break out between Iran and Israel, the United States would inevitably become a player in it. And elections in that country are just around the corner, and public opinion is very clear that the appetite for wars is very, very low in the United States currently.
I would agree with you, Neha, that the Americans would do everything in their power, particularly behind the scenes, to restrain the Israelis, because that is the clear message that the Biden administration has given, and also Kamala Harris. We are not so sure about the kind of conversation that Trump had with him, but it is very clear that this is a very awkward time for the United States to get overly involved in this conflict, given the fact also, Neha, that there is a huge and very influential Jewish community and lobby in the United States, which are funding both the Democrats and the Republicans. So it's not so easy for the Americans to be too neutral on this matter. That's why they have tried to pressure Bibi Netanyahu in their own manner to step back from the precipice. And they, at some point, they even tried to cut off some of their arms. But when the Israelis started saying they're running short, they recommenced it. So my feeling is that this is not the first time that the Iranians have vowed revenge. If you remember, there was an incident sometime back when an Israeli top general was eliminated. They did take revenge, but they took it in a calibrated manner. And I feel that they will take revenge, but in a calibrated manner, possibly through their proxies, but in a manner that they would make it clear that they have to do it for a face saver, but they don't want the conflict to go further. It's not in their interest at all. It's not in Iranian interest. The Iranian people also are not in an appetite to face more sanctions from the West or to sink further into a further deterioration of their economic situation. So I think that there would be some kind of a trade-off behind the scenes, and there would be huge pressure on Netanyahu to finally accept some kind of a negotiated deal by which the hostages, dead or alive, would come back and that humanitarian aid would re-enter Gaza and some kind of redevelopment of Gaza would commence so that the civilian suffering could come to an end sooner rather than later. That is my assessment, and I think that there is no other scenario possible given the fact that the US presidential elections are coming up just for little less than 4 months ago. Yeah.
Clearly, the United States would do everything in its power to ensure that things don't get out of hand and that the response from Iran and subsequently from Israel remains limited and measured. Maybe a face saver of the kind that we saw in the month of April when the two countries exchanged a round of military and drone attacks without actually causing any significant or serious damage on either side. Well, just claim victory and move on. I'm sure that's what Washington would want the two sides to do here. On that note, Ambassador Bhaswati Mukherjee, thank you so much for joining me on the show. Always a pleasure to have you.
It's a pleasure. Thanks.
Let me now take this to our new guest, Captain Alok Bansal. Captain Alok Bansal, a lot has happened just in the last 48 hours. 3 high-profile assassinations by Israel have been reported of a top Hezbollah commander and 2 of the senior-most leaders of Hamas. Where do you think the war is going? Could this be an inflection point? Are we likely to see some sort of de-escalation, or could things get much worse before they get better? How do you see this?
See, as far as Hamas leaders' attack is concerned, and we need to make a distinction, Mohammed Deif is supposed to have been killed in an air attack inside Gaza, whereas Ismail Haniyeh's attack inside Iran is by an insider and has not been claimed by Israel, because that will be even more difficult to justify, because he was not only a political leader, he was believed to be negotiating for peace. He had lived in Qatar for most of his life for last few years, and he had been the elected prime minister of Palestine at one stage of time. So that would be difficult at this stage for Israel to justify. And as a result, Israel has actually not taken any claim as far as that assassination is concerned. But it is that assassination which will create a bigger problem, because if it has happened within Iran's territory, and according to reports emanating, Ayatollah Khamenei, who's the supreme leader, or Velayat-e Faqih, has already asked for direct aggression against Israel. So this could aggravate things, and this could aggravate things at a time when most of the global community wants things to pacify. And especially in the United States, as was being told by Ambassador Bhaswati Mukherjee, there is actually deep polarization. There is a substantive support for Hamas's and Palestinian cause. At the same time, United States has a huge, very, very influential Jewish diaspora, which is actually closely aligned with Israel. So we will have a problem, and I think there should be increased pressure from the United States on Bibi Netanyahu to clamp down and to come to some sort of a negotiated settlement. Unfortunately for Bibi Netanyahu, the choices are very few. If he comes to a negotiated settlement, he has to go.
Exactly.
Public
He's a stubborn man, and many believe that he wants the war to continue for his own political survival.
See, there is no doubt in my mind. I think right from the time the attack took place, it was a foregone conclusion that it was a big failure of the political leadership. And any time when Israel gets time and Israelis get time to ponder over it, he will have to go. So what he has done is that from that moment onwards, he has embroiled Israel in an unending war. That war which cannot be won, unfortunately.
Absolutely. You know, when you say you're going to wipe Hamas off the face of the planet, you have to remember this is not just an organization, not just a bunch of terrorists. This is an ideology, and the stated objective of this war, frankly, is easier said than done. And if you say that you wanted to, well, eliminate the leadership, of Hamas, then you've already succeeded to a large extent. This may be a good point to claim victory and exit Gaza and reach some sort of a negotiated settlement. But the question is Netanyahu even interested in a settlement? I think that is a million-dollar question. Let me take this back to Lieutenant General Sanjay Kulkarni, who's been listening patiently to all the other panelists. Well, clearly, opinion on this panel is divided. Captain Alok Bansal seems to think that there could be a serious escalation in the days ahead, while there are others who believe that this could well be a point of de-escalation. That apart, Lieutenant General Sanjay Kulkarni, I want to share with you and our viewers a very interesting report that came out this evening, just a couple of hours ago, as a matter of fact. The New York Times has reported that the Hamas leader who was assassinated in Iran this week, Ismail Haniyeh, was killed by a bomb smuggled into his guest house in Tehran months ago. The device was hidden in the Tehran complex where Haniyeh was staying and was detonated remotely. You are a military man, sir. What do you make of this report that's been carried by the New York Times? Do you believe this is likely to actually give rise to conspiracy theories?
Neha, well, very difficult to say so. Very difficult. Firstly, because invariably he was never staying where he's staying right. He was staying right now for a reason, because he was in some kind of a soldiers, living where all those who participated in Iraq-Iran war. So that's the residence that he had. This one was the special guest house of the presidential palace, and therefore it's very difficult. Of course, it's an inside job. There is no denying the fact that there is a missile that has come. And what the Iranians have said, initial preliminary, a missile. But this, what is said, is an explosion, an IED, which was been remotely activated by someone over there. Seems difficult, but anyway, investigations will reveal whatever it may be. But having said this, I would personally say a person like Netanyahu, who was at 58 standing ovations in the Senate over there, if we are saying that the Americans are divided on this issue, the Americans aren't divided. They're very, very clear. You see the statement given by Trump or by Biden, or even for that matter for Kamala Harris, anybody and everybody, the Americans stand behind Israel. So Netanyahu is actually executing directly or indirectly what the Americans want, and definitely for his own survival. Now, I think he has reached a stage where he now knows elimination of Hamas is not possible. They've tried the level best. Obviously, there had not been one protest, one demonstration in Gaza against Hamas. Till now, even though 40,000 people are dead, entire Gaza is destroyed, not one demonstration against Hamas. What does that indicate? What you rightly said, an ideology which cannot be eliminated. So the Israelis know it's impossible. They've known it for the last 100 years. So it's not possible. In that case, I think Netanyahu and the Israel leadership will now decide that, well, knocking out the leadership is what they were looking at least for the next 25, 30 years. We'll see it later. But what Israel also looking at, a permanent solution, that permanent solution is an illusion. There will be never a permanent solution. This kind of a situation will keep coming and going. This kind of incidents will keep happening. Iran will retaliate, but it will be a very, very limited retaliation. Gaza hasn't affected the world, but a Middle East crisis now, if there's a war between Iran, Israel, where US steps in. Imagine the mediation by China speaks of Jerusalem as the capital. Jerusalem has already been declared capital by the United States of Israel. So I'm really sure these are two different visions of Palestinian, wanting what they want from Israel. At this point of time, limited retaliation by Iran, which will be just enough to create chaos in the world for some time, but no economic crisis. Not because we've seen Gaza hasn't affected the world, but the war, a larger war in the Middle East, will affect the entire world of gas, energy, prices, supply chains, so many things it will affect, which will be beyond control. And I don't think anybody wants it. Neither Iran, nor Russia, nor China, nor America, nor Israel. Nobody wants it. And that is the only good thing. And this is the deterrence in itself, because the whole world is dependent on one another. And this dependency is a deterrence which nobody wants a war. If there was no dependency on each other, probably there would have been a war.
But the question is, who will rein in Benjamin Netanyahu? As I take closing comments, I'll quickly go across to first Dr. Zakir Hussain and then Captain Alok Bansal. Dr. Hussain, General Sanjay Kulkarni says there will never be a permanent solution to this dispute. We all know that Israel does not want a two-state solution. In fact, given the fact that, you know, you've had the assassinations of some of the most high profile and top leaders of Hamas, this could be a very good opportunity for Israel to claim victory, try and reach some sort of a peace deal and bring back home the remaining hostages, which they say has been one of the primary objectives of this war. But then there are those who believe that Benjamin Netanyahu, for his own political reasons and selfish reasons, does not want this war to end. And there are those who even accuse him of not caring even about those remaining hostages. Where do you see this going? I mean, do you believe that these assassinations, instead of being a point of de-escalation, are going to embolden Netanyahu further also because he believes that he has the United States firmly in his corner?
If this war does not stop and Netanyahu does not listen and two-nation theory is not accepted, then this reminds me the war of 100 years of war of roses between England and France. Israel is not so powerful to remain at the helm. It is in the power because of US and other forces, NATO. So if Israel is not deciding on two-state nation, it has to wind up and go back. This is the only solution in the region because these forces are not going to leave there. Either Netanyahu use nuclear bomb and finish everyone. Somewhere Netanyahu
I see your point, but the trouble is everyone except for Netanyahu and Israel wants a two-state solution. Even their strongest ally, the United States, has said so. But who is going to convince Netanyahu? Who is going to convince the Israelis? If a more moderate government comes in following the new election, something might change. But at the moment, that does look very, very unlikely. Is it going to be, an endless war? That's how it seems, unfortunately. Captain Alok Bansal, very quickly, sir, wrap up this discussion for us. Where do you see this headed? It seems it's impossible for anyone to convince Netanyahu to dial down the tensions.
See, first thing which you need to understand is that you cannot win against an ideologically driven opponent by bombs and bullets. You ideally have to target his brain, and that no attempt has been done. So if actually Netanyahu wants peace, they have to negotiate, which Netanyahu at this moment is not neither interested nor in a position, because he knows that if he loses power, he is going to be convicted. And that's where he is the problem. So that is as far as Netanyahu is concerned. The war obviously cannot be won for hundreds of years. Two-state solution is not an ideal solution. I again repeat, India was not in support of two-nation solution right from beginning. And it's not an ideal solution. But yes, under the present circumstances, this probably seems the only way out for stopping.
The only way out. But then, like I said, who's going to convince Netanyahu and the bunch of far-right leaders who currently are governing Israel? Like I said, something might change if there is a fresh election and a more moderate leader like Benny Gantz comes in. But, it will still be very difficult for any Israeli leader to agree to a two-state solution. Well, this is the story. Yes.
Israel's Labour Party, which was a moderate one and actually accepted, has now actually been reduced to an insignificant level. Otherwise,
exactly. That is the sad reality of the Middle East. Is it really a never-ending war? Well, this is a story we'll continue to track very closely. But I'd like to thank Lieutenant General Sanjay Kulkarni, Dr. Zakir Hussain and Captain Alok Bansal for joining me on Global Lens tonight. All right, let's now turn our attention to the United States, where the presidential contest is hotting up. The campaign war in the US ahead of the November presidential election is getting more and more bitter, nasty and personal. The Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump has now questioned Vice President and the presumptive Democratic nominee Kamala Harris's racial identity. Trump's controversial remarks that have since gone viral came during a heated exchange at the National Association of Black Journalists convention in Chicago. Trump falsely claimed that Harris had only emphasized her Indian American heritage until recently, and then she became a black person, he said. These are Trump's exact words, and I quote, "I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black. So I don't know, is she Indian or is she black?" Trump then went on to say, "I respect either one, but she obviously doesn't because she was Indian all the way and then all of a sudden she made a turn and she became a black person." Kamala Harris has termed Trump's remarks the same old show of divisiveness and disrespect. She responded to his tirade by saying, "The American people deserve better. We deserve a leader who understands that our differences do not divide us. They are an essential source of our strength." Remember, Kamala Harris is the first black and Asian American vice president of the United States with Indian and Jamaican-born parents.
I've known her a long time indirectly, not directly very much, and she was always of Indian heritage, and she was only promoting Indian heritage. I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black. So I don't know, is she Indian or is she black?
She has always identified as a black woman. She went to a historically black college.
I respect either one, but she obviously doesn't, because she was Indian all the way, and then all of a sudden she made a turn and she became a black person.
Just to be clear, sir, do
and
you believe that
I think
she is
somebody should look into that too when you continue in a very hostile, nasty tone. I have been the best president for the black population since Abraham Lincoln. That's my answer.
Better than President Johnson, who signed the Voting Rights.
All right, from that nasty political campaign in the US, let's now turn our attention to the Paris Olympics, and it is once again good news for India. It was another good day for India at the Paris Olympics. The country has now won 3 bronze medals and all 3 have come from the shooting range. 28-year-old Swapnil Kusale has added a 3rd medal to India's tally by winning a bronze in men's 50-meter rifle 3 positions final. Not many would have predicted a 50-meter rifle 3 positions medal for India. The fact that it was the unheralded Swapnil Kusale who did it makes the moment all the more special. And today, Kusale seemed to be in a league of his own, and his journey is no less than inspiring. He started out as a ticket collector and is today India's Olympic hero.
Olympic medal जीतना ये like हर एथलीट का सपना होता है, and so I work hard इतने सालों से, and एक level I achieved here, and इसके बाद भी I will do hard work. And I will make proud next year also, like next Olympic में. मैंने स्कोरबोर्ड नहीं देखा था, like कौन कितने रैंक पे है, मेरा रैंक क्या है. मैं बस मेरा प्रोसीजर और मेरा जो फॉलो थ्रू है वो सब के ऊपर ध्यान देता गया, एंड खुद के ब्रीथ के ऊपर मोस्टली मैंने ध्यान दिया कि मेरी ब्रीथ काम रहे, मेरी बॉडी काम रहे, और वही चीज़ मुझे एक यहाँ लेवल पर लेके आई.
Okay, our next story is also from the Paris Olympics. The Olympics produce new heroes every day, but here's one Olympian who's become an overnight internet sensation and the world can't keep calm. We are talking about Turkish shooter Yusuf Dikeç, whose silver medal win at the Paris Olympics is stuff not only of dreams but also movies and web series, some might say. In an Olympic competition where participants use all the available equipment at their disposal to get ahead, Dikeç stunned everyone as he offered a masterclass in nonchalance during the air pistol mixed team competition on Tuesday. While his opponents took to the competition with specialized equipment, custom glasses to obscure vision in one eye, large ear protection and tinted lenses, believe it or not, Dikeç managed to claim Turkey's first ever Olympic medal in shooting in what looked like his everyday glasses and one hand in his pocket. You heard that right, no protective equipment or eye gear. None whatsoever. And guess what? He's 51 years old. Yusuf Dikeç told a Turkish radio station, "I shoot with both eyes. Most shooters do it with one. So I didn't want all that equipment. Shooting with 2 eyes, I believe it's better. I've done a lot of research on it, so I didn't want that equipment." Shooting with my hand in one pocket has nothing to do with any artistry. I'm more motivated and feel more comfortable while shooting. And that stance is actually about bringing the body to equilibrium and focusing and concentrating. As we said, ever since his images went viral, the internet can't stop raving about this Olympian and his aura. He's also become the subject of a meme fest on social media. One social media user said, "Top confidence, a hand in one pocket, no specialized lenses, no problem, too easy for him." Another lauded his insane aura. Someone else wrote, "At 51 years old, he competed in the Olympic Games as if he were on the patio at his home." After securing the silver, Dikesh said, "I'm happy. An Olympic medal is an Olympic medal, and in Los Angeles, which is going to host the 2028 Games, hopefully it will be a gold medal." All right, and we're going to wrap up this edition of Global Lens also with a story from Paris Olympics, but not a happy one. In a shocking and heartbreaking moment at the Paris Olympics, Italian boxer Angela Carini broke down in tears after she abandoned her bout against Algerian Iman Khalif after just 46 seconds in a fight. And this has sparked a huge controversy at the Olympics. Now, Khalif is one of two boxers permitted to fight at the Olympics despite being disqualified from the Women's World Championships last year for failing testosterone and gender eligibility tests. In fact, he is referred to as a biological male. In highly charged scenes at the North Paris arena, Carini revealed afterwards that she had pulled out after being hit harder than she'd ever been hit before in her entire life. A first punch dislodged her chin strap and a second smashed against her chin and bloodied her shorts. Carini said, "I'm heartbroken. I went to the ring to honor my father. I was told a lot of times that I was a warrior, but I prefer to stop for my health. I have never felt a punch like this." Now, this is a story that has shocked people around the world, even though Carini was quite graceful and said, "It is not up to me to judge whether Khalif should have been barred from the women's competition." But Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni has said, "I think the athletes who have male genetic characteristics should not be admitted to women's competitions. And not because you want to discriminate against someone, but to protect the right of the female athletes to be able to compete on equal terms." She says, "I was emotional. And seeing what's happened, it certainly is unfair because everybody deserves a chance to be able to compete on equal grounds. And in my point of view, this was not an even contest." Remember, last year, Khalif was actually disqualified from the 2023 Women's World Championships with International Amateur Boxing saying that his DNA test had proved Khalif had XY chromosomes. This is a story that has sparked a massive controversy and debate at the Olympics. Well, that's all the time we have on this edition of Global Lens. Thanks so much for watching.
Fast.
My God, isn't she your daughter?
Yes.
She's playing football. This is boys' game. Make her study. If she doesn't get a good job, she will get a good match. Will you win the world by playing football?
Yes, auntie. My daughter will win the world by playing football.
Let's go to Germany.
World's largest football talent hunt, News9 Indian Tigers and Tigresses. In association with DFB Pokal, Bundesliga, BVB and India Football Center. Train and play matches in Europe. Register now and fly to Germany. IndianTigersandTigresses.com.
Over 20 healthcare trailblazers and